Lots of BDSM resources use the word switch to mean two totally different things. This was actually popularized by the new generation or the next generation because in very traditional BDSM, the identity of switch really kind of didn't exist. Let me explain. Old guard hierarchy. And it's those people who we now call old guard. They didn't call themselves old guard, but derives itself from the structure of military rank. If you begin as a private or a corporal, and through mastery of skill and experience, reach a commissioned rank such as captain or major, the responsibilities of your commissioned rank kind of prohibit you from ever going back to being just a private or a corporal again. In that old guard mentality or philosophy, mastery was transformative. It was really improbable that you would be the master of one person and then the slave of another, because masters became masters not through just assuming the title necessarily, but through mastery. Masters meant that you mastered a skill or a set of skills. You mastered a power exchange dynamic. It was perfectly acceptable for a man to choose to remain a slave and not desire to really work toward mastery. Within Old Guard, there was, however, a word for men who liked to give and receive kinks. Men who were bottom to certain kinks and top in other kinks were called versatile. In gay culture today, this is terminology that is still in use. Some men are predominantly tops, others are predominantly bottoms, and those who like some of both are versatile. In the early 1990s, when Old Guard really faded, or that generation faded, and more modern ways of BDSM became more common, is when we first see the identity of switch beginning to form. Before this time, people largely earned their titles or from their local community, or they had local credentials to back up who they said they were. They weren't universal everywhere, they were more localized. Today, they're self assigned, hopefully, with our personality and actions adding validation to what we've chosen instead of a local community, backing that up, or a local bar, a local scene. The idea of people earning dominant titles through mastery has largely faded. The identity of Switch is a person who has the potential to be the dominant in one relationship dynamic and the submissive in another relationship dynamic. This identity was formed based on preference. Sometimes a switch prefers one relationship at a time. They're dominant in their current relationship, for example, and then when that relationship ends, in their next relationship, they're a submissive, or they're a dominant, and then a submissive, a dominant back again. In each relationship, when it forms, they have the potential to be either the dominant consistently in that relationship or the submissive consistently in that one relationship. Others practice being a switch through non-monogamy, where they're a dominant with one partner and they're a submissive with a different partner, but they're consistently a dominant with the first partner and consistently a submissive with the second. Oftentimes, BDSM resources, especially those who kind of followed the money and those who are really influenced by this next generation or this new generation, will confuse everyone by using the word switch to really mean versatile. Anyone who prefers to be the top during some kinks and the bottom during other kinks in a scene is versatile. This even applies to the kink of role playing. If one acts like a dominant in some scenes and acts like a submissive in other scenes, or switches between dominant roles and submissive roles within the same scene, that person is versatile. Role playing is when one acts like something within a scene that does not match their identity outside of that scene. Oftentimes, role playing is a huge kink within BDSM as a whole because people role play their power exchange just in temporary bedroom only scenes, but it doesn't carry out or spill out into their everyday vanilla lives. Another next generation invention is mixing the identity of switch and the kink of versatile role playing together. Out of that mutation comes a switch who's somehow both the dominant and the submissive uh, within the same relationship dynamic. There isn't any real way for this to work other than causing chaos. It just functionally doesn't work. And then it's a breakdown of what it means to be truly dominant and truly submissive. Without that consistency within the relationship of the consistent identities for one partner and the other, the relationship oftentimes is not healthy. Oftentimes, people don't know. Which is which at what time, what role playing is happening at what, and there can be a confusion. One will make a rule and the other will override that rule later down the road in another scene. And so switch is just the identity of switch, and the role of versatile are a switch is someone who has the potential, whether similar to bisexuality, they may not have partners of more than one gender in, just similar, not an exact analogy, but similar to that. A switch may not be a dominant and a submissive at the same time in different relationships. But they have the potential to be one in one relationship and the other in a different relationship. And then versatile, just to wrap it back up, is versatile is anyone who sometimes likes to top and other times likes to bottom. And when we're talking about topping and bottom, we are talking about top being the action of doing something to somebody, and the bottom being the action of something being done to you. It's really action based, not really role based, unless we're talking about the kink specifically of role playing. And so, switch is completely valid in our modern BDSM context, even though it didn't used to really exist. It is valid in today's uh, context because we practice a lot of ethical non-monogamy, and we don't have lifetime relationships all the time, and so even back in old guard, uh, you know, it's somewhat of a puzzle, and we're just putting the puzzle together as best as we can. That's the way that all history works. And so there is some room there that perhaps it did, but we don't really have a lot of evidence of that in those early writings that we have access to. And so, but we did see a lot of versatility. And so there isn't really any real way for versatility switch within that same relationship dynamic to work. And so a lot of times, even a lot of BDSM resources, they really mix it up and they cause a lot of confusion. And so you don't have to use the words switch or use the words versatile. You can, although we prefer it because versatility really just clears it up and makes it easier to distinguish the two. This is Primal Piggy. You can find me on Facebook at the Primal Piggy, or you can find me at Whips, Chains, and Duct Tape, a rather large Facebook page at WCDT BDSM. You can find all of our resources at www.bdsmunited.com. If you're listening to this podcast on your favorite platform, be sure to leave a review so that others can hear what you like or dislike about our podcast, and so that we can get the feedback and change anything if we need to. Thank you for listening today.